The date was 28 June 1914. Franz Ferdinand had just completed a brief military inspection and was on his way to the city hall of Sarajevo. As his car was passing through a crowded street, something terrible happened. A man standing in the crowd took out a bomb from his pocket and threw it directly at Franz Ferdinand's car. What followed was absolute chaos as the sudden explosion injured several officers and civilians. People started to flee the area while the officers tried to get a hold of the bomber. Who was this person? Why did he try to assassinate Franz Ferdinand? And what was the wrong turn that started World War I? It all began at the dawn of the 20th century, a time when the world was in the midst of a political revolution. Countries were eager to control more territories and preferred going to war rather than having peaceful talks. This was especially evident in the Balkan region of Europe, where several nation-states wanted to conquer more territory for themselves. It was at this time, in 1908, that the Austro-Hungarian Empire officially annexed the territories of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This decision angered their Balkan neighbors, especially Serbia. Serbian officials themselves wanted control over Bosnia and were left unhappy with Austria-Hungary's decision. But they knew that declaring a war against Austria-Hungary would bring its ally, Germany, into the picture. On the other hand, Austria-Hungary knew that if they were to declare war, the Triple Entente, a powerful alliance between Russia, France, and Great Britain, would step in to support Serbia. Due to these conflicts and secret alliances, the situation around the world was quite tense, and everyone knew that war was inevitable. Enter Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne and Inspector General of the Austro-Hungarian army. During this tense situation, it was announced that Ferdinand would be conducting a military inspection in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. Shockingly, the schedule and route of Franz Ferdinand's entire trip was announced to the general public well in advance. Upon receiving information of his visit, a secret group in Serbia by the name of Black Hand devised a plan to assassinate Franz Ferdinand and send a strong message to Austria-Hungary. On 28 June 1914, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were on their way to visit the city hall, completely unaware of the danger awaiting them. As Ferdinand's car passed through the crowd, one of the assassins threw a bomb at them. Fortunately, the bomb bounced off of their car and blew up another vehicle instead. Ferdinand escaped unhurt and went on to deliver a speech at the City Hall event. After the event, however, Ferdinand insisted on going back to meet the wounded people in the hospital. In order to avoid the crowds, the authorities decided that taking another route to the hospital would be the best choice. This entire conversation between the authorities took place in German. However, the drivers of the royal cars were not German speakers. They did not understand the conversation, and oddly enough, nobody translated it for them. Unaware that they had to take a different route, the drivers set off on their journey with Ferdinand, Sophie, and some other officials. But as fate would have it, the drivers were unfamiliar with the route and they took a wrong turn. The royal cars entered another street, and by sheer coincidence, one of the assassins, Gavrilo Princip, was waiting right there. By the time the drivers realized their mistake, Gavrilo shot Franz Ferdinand and his wife at point-blank range. The assassination was successful, and the whole world was stunned. Austria-Hungary was upset about this and believed that Serbia had planned the assassination. But more importantly, Austria-Hungary saw this as the perfect opportunity to humiliate Serbia by defeating them in war. They were, however, hesitant to start the war as they did not want to be seen as the oppressors of Serbia. At this point, Austria-Hungary came up with a list of ridiculous demands for Serbia. These demands were intentionally made unacceptable, and Austria-Hungary was basically asking Serbia to accept their demands or prepare for war. Surprisingly, Serbia was ready to accept most of the demands but refused a few of them. Austria-Hungary took advantage of their refusal, and on 28 July 1914, exactly a month after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, they declared war on Serbia. Eventually, Germany, Russia, France, Great Britain, Italy, Japan, America, and many other nations across the world were dragged into this war, which we now call World War I. This is how a wrong turn followed by an assassination set off a chain of events that led to a global war. Lasting more than 4 years, World War I was one of the deadliest wars in human history and led to the death of more than 8.5 million soldiers and 13 million civilians. After the war ended, the world was hit by the Spanish flu pandemic, which led to the death of another 50 million people. Nations were born, empires had fallen, and several borders were redrawn. For a while, it seemed like the war to end all wars had actually managed to settle several conflicts once and for all. But just 20 years later, the world would witness a much more devastating conflict in the form of World War II.